Lane Kiffin is the hottest coaching commodity in college football. Everybody wants him, but nobody can have him. Or will they have them? Or will he just stay at Ole Miss? Of course, he's the name that's been most linked to the job at Florida. We've heard his name come up at LSU, but Florida's the one that's been, well, the team we've been needing to keep an eye on here closely. And of course, Ole Miss did play Florida and beat them this past week, 34-24 in a game that was a little bit closer than we were all expecting. But we're now entering a week here where Ole Miss is off. They're in a bye week, so there's going to be a lot of chatter, a lot of rumors about Lane Kiffin before they end their regular season against Mississippi State and the Egg Bowl. Richard Johnson, where we stand right now, I'm of the viewpoint of, like, there's no way to predict what Lane Kiffin's going to do because it's Lane Kiffin. But this does seem to be a legit situation where it almost seems 50-50 whether he's going to stay in Oxford or go to Gainesville and be the new Florida Gators head coach.
Yeah, how about we stick with the Ole Miss of it all first, right? Because this is, first of all, the second time he's done this, by the way. And by this, I mean run a potential new job situation up all the way into an Egg Bowl, which a lot of teams have rivals. Few have a rivalry like Ole Miss and Mississippi State. It is the Super Bowl. I understand all of Ole Miss's goals are still in front of them as far as the postseason, but that Egg Bowl matters. And this bye week, I think Ole Miss administrators, fans, other folks in sort of that Oxford bubble are going to turn up some heat on what are we doing here? Because this has happened before, again, with the Auburn job the last time it was open, where Lane flirted with Auburn very, very openly, took it all the way up until Thanksgiving week, until Egg Bowl week, and he has even said that it was a distraction at the time. Well, you're doing the same thing again. Because at the end of the day, if you really wanted to, you could sign the contract like Mike Elko did, and Kurt Cignetti did, and Matt Rule did. And, you know, all these coaches that have signed these extensions and have gotten it out of the way and stayed where they're at. But you have Lane with this indecision, in addition to the way Lane's agent likes to conduct business, Jimmy Sexton at CAA, which is sort of using time as a leverage point. So you understand that that's the way they want to play the game. And that's fair. But if I'm Ole Miss, what are we doing here? Like, it's got to be a you-know-what or get off the pot at some point in time, because are we really going to let this continually be a distraction? We've given you everything you want as far as Ole Miss. We've upped our investment. We've certainly, obviously, gotten a team that can compete for a literal national championship, because that's what they're doing right now. What is it more that you want from us? What leverage are you trying to extract here? And so you can understand why Ole Miss folks are very frustrated. You can understand why the Secretary of State of Mississippi has been tweeting some things. You can understand why head of Ole Miss's athletic collective has been retweeting things. You can understand why that fan base is pretty upset right now, deservedly so.
Yeah, you mentioned it there. Ole Miss has been actively in discussions with Jimmy Sexton and their agency there to try to keep him there and keep him happy in Oxford. That's been going on for the better part of the last 4 weeks, I'm told. And Keith Carter there at the athletics department, they have put certain packages in front of him that would want him to stay there. But it certainly seems like that for Lane Kiffin, it's not about the money right now, because he's going to get paid no matter what. But the situation is, can I go to a Florida where I'm not necessarily going to have to work as hard to get five-star talent, and I know year over year, I can become a dominant program that's contending for national championships and winning them, rather than just having to, I hate to say scrape by in Mississippi, but it is just more difficult to get that type of talent there. Now, Lane Kiffin's personality and his offense, that draws a lot of attention. And I will say their collective, they've done a fantastic job these last 3 years in being able to attract players and keep them there through their monetary situation. But at Florida, the feeling is, and he has straight up said this publicly, in fact, this past week, that he's always just kind of sat there and dreamed about coaching a blue blood and being at a program like that, which if you're an Ole Miss fan, you got to sit there and go, dude, stop talking about other ladies out there. We're sitting here on the dance floor dancing with you right now, and you're whispering going, man, I sure wish I had a blonde. Like, come on, give me a break. We're having a nice dance moment here, a nice moment. And we talk a lot about him maturing and all that. But it's still a situation where it's all about him still. It's just a different way, a different philosophy he's going about it. Because as you said, he's dragging this on and on where other coaches, including like Matt Rule, that's the one I really circle is this is a guy that had a chance to go back home and go coach the program that he played for. And that is a blue blood. And he said, you know what? Let's quiet this down. I'm done with this. We need to get this over with so I can keep recruiting and building here. Give me a contract to sign it. And meanwhile, Lane Kiffin's just kind of doing his own thing, just dancing there going, look at me, look at me. Who wants to come join me? It's interesting. Do you think this gets settled this week, or do you think it goes all the way into the Egg Bowl?
You know, it's interesting because if I'm Ole Miss, you're going to want to try to put him in between a rock and a hard place. If I'm Ole Miss, I say, Lane, if you say you're going to Florida, do you think we're just going to let you coach the college football playoff? Like, why would you let him do that? If I was a coordinator, then I think it'd be a little bit of a different story. Coordinators could kind of do both things. Famously, by the way, Lane did that when he was with Alabama at FAU, or with the FAU job, I should say, and it went so poorly that Saban got rid of him between the semifinal and the college football national championship game, and Sark took over, you will recall. So I do understand that it's just not palatable for a head coach to openly say, I'm taking a new job, and then for Ole Miss, I think you say, yeah, I think you tell him, you think you're going to coach this team through the playoff? You think you're going to continue here for another 3 weeks after the Egg Bowl, after you said openly, theoretically, that you're going to be the next head coach of the University of Florida? That's not what I would want if I was Ole Miss. That's an absolute slap in the face if I'm Ole Miss. That also then creates a situation on your roster where you may have guys that start looking elsewhere because they know their coach is not going to be there. And then Ole Miss may host a first round playoff game at home with a coach who says openly and signed a contract that another SEC rival. That's not how that works. Like, that would be such a cynical and ridiculous bad thing for the sport if Lane Kiffin were to say, I'm going to the Florida job and then try to coach out the college football playoff at Ole Miss. I think that's ridiculous. So if I'm Ole Miss, I just keep trying to turn up the heat, and just kind of see what happens at that point in time.
You mentioned it. 2 of the last 3 times he's been in like a job situation, he's waited until like the last minute to do something, right? To make a decision. Whether it was the Auburn job 3 years ago, or, and as you mentioned, when he was coaching at Alabama and got the FAU job, he just thought, well, I can just keep doing what I'm doing so I get me a ring. And Nick Saban's like, no, dude, this isn't working. You got to go. So I think he's just doing it a different way by being a little bit more open and like saying he's changed and all this. But it's still the same mindset. I think he's just like, let me get to the end of the regular season and then I'll make my decision. But that's just not how the rest of the world works. And he's asking the rest of the world to rotate around him right now. And he's a great coach. And Ole Miss is going to show more patience for that because they certainly don't want to lose him. But this is an interesting situation.